Hi everybody, this is Shannon from No Shelf Control. Thanks for joining me on the channel tonight and happy Mother's Day. So for those of you who are moms out there today, I hope that you had a wonderful day. I have some exciting books to talk to you about because, as always, my library is doing a challenge again this month. We did the March challenge and the April challenge, and now it's time for the May challenge. The May challenge is actually read a book that has a movie or TV adaptation. And they made some suggestions that I'm going to go over with you today. But I also did some research and looked to see what books are actually coming out with movie or show adaptations in the next few months, and thought we would talk about those as well. And it's a pretty cool list, so I hope you're looking forward to it. The first one that my library put together for the challenge is A Man Called Ove, which is probably no surprise to anyone. That one was published July 15th, 2014 by Atria Books, and it's 337 pages. The movie adaptation is called A Man Called Ove. You've heard me talk about this on the channel before. I'm sure that they changed the name because as Americans, we would have been going around talking about the movie A Man Called Ove, but it's called A Man Called Ove in the movie theaters, and it stars Tom Hanks. And let's see. So I'm going to read you a little bit about A Man Called Ove. A grumpy yet lovable man finds his solitary world turned on its head when a boisterous young family moves in next door. Meet Ove. He's a curmudgeon, the kind of man who points at people he dislikes as if they were burglars caught outside his bedroom window. He has staunch principles, strict routines, and a short fuse. People call him the bitter neighbor from hell, but must Ove be bitter just because he doesn't walk around with a smile plastered to his face all the time? Behind the cranky exterior, there is a story and a sadness. So when one November morning, a chatty young couple with two chatty young daughters move in next door and accidentally flatten Ove's mailbox, it is the lead-in to a comical and heartwarming tale of unkempt cats, unexpected friendship, and the ancient art of backing up a U-Haul, all of which will change one cranky old man and a local residents association to their very foundations. So I read this one several years ago, really loved it. It's a very touching story. It's fun. It is serious in places, so it's not all light and happy-go-lucky, but I really enjoyed it. Loved the characters, loved the story. If you haven't read A Man Called Ove, I highly recommend it. I have not yet seen the movie, but I would recommend seeing that as well, just because I love Tom Hanks. So the challenge this month is to find a book that you haven't read that has an adaptation and read the book and see the movie or the show. So let's see how we do with that. The second one my library recommended is called Kindred. I'm sure many of you have heard of this one. It's by Octavia Butler, and it is 288 pages by Beacon Press, and it was published January 1st, 2003. The movie is, of course, called Kindred. I love both the book cover and the movie poster, so I thought I'd show you both of those here. And then let's read a little bit about the synopsis. The first science fiction written by a Black woman, Kindred has become a cornerstone of Black American literature. This combination of slave memoir, fantasy, and historical fiction is a novel of rich literary complexity. Having just celebrated her 26th birthday in 1976 California, Dana, an African-American woman, is suddenly and inexplicably wrenched through time into antebellum Maryland. After saving a drowning white boy there, she finds herself staring into the barrel of a shotgun and is transported back to the present just in time to save her life. During numerous such time-defying episodes with the same young man, she realizes the challenge she's been given. So I have never read Kindred. I've heard wonderful things about it. It sounds fascinating. And of course it is sort of a cornerstone book, something that I certainly should have read by now. But really excited about that one. I think this might be what I pick up as my challenge book for both the book and the movie. The movie's coming out on Hulu. It'll be a Hulu series, just so you know where to find it. The third one my librarians recommended is Murder on the Orient Express, another one that I certainly should have read by now, by Agatha Christie. I have actually never read an Agatha Christie book. So I recently saw an Agatha Christie play, but that is as close as I have come. But I know that there are many folks who absolutely love her work and that I probably should have read it by now. So let's do Murder on the Orient Express. It's 274 pages, HarperCollins, and published June 4th, 2007. I don't know why I thought it was a lot older than that. Maybe this is a new edition? I don't know, but the setting is Yugoslavia on the Orient Express. And in 2013, it won the CWA Best Ever for Crime Novel. Here's the synopsis. Just after midnight, a snowdrift stops the famous Orient Express in its tracks as it travels through the mountainous Balkans. The luxurious train is surprisingly full for this time of the year, but by the morning, it is one passenger fewer. An American tycoon lies dead in his compartment, stabbed a dozen times, his door locked from the inside. One of the passengers is none other than Detective Hercule Poirot, on vacation. Isolated and with a killer on board, Poirot must identify the murderer in case he or she decides to strike again. So this is from the Hercule Poirot series, and I was right. It was published way before the date that I gave earlier, the 2007 date. All of the books in the Hercule Poirot series, it's listed here in the synopsis, of them, the first one starts in 1920, and Death on the Nile ends in 1937. So yeah, I was right. This was published a long time before 2007. So a new movie coming out, Murder on the Orient Express, or it actually is already out, 2017, stars Kenneth Branagh, Penelope Cruz, Willem Dafoe, Judi Dench, Johnny Depp, Leslie Odom Jr., Michelle Pfeiffer, and Daisy Ridley. So that is quite the cast. I will be interested in checking that one out after I read the book. Next one up from my librarians is another favorite of mine, and I'm just gonna have to watch the movie because I loved the book so much. Even if it's not my challenge book, I'm gonna have to do this. So the next one is Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee. It is a national bestseller and a National Book Award finalist. I absolutely loved it. It was published February 7th, 2017, 496 pages, but I read it really fast. It was that good. And it's by Grand Central Publishing. The setting is Osaka, Japan, of course, Busan, Korea, Nagano, Japan, and Yokohama, Japan. And it won a ton of awards. I'm not even going to read all of those to you. Here's the synopsis for this one. In the early 1900s, teenaged Sunja, the adored daughter of a crippled fisherman, falls for a wealthy stranger at the seashore near her home in Korea. He promises her the world, but when she discovers she's pregnant and that her lover is married, she refuses to be bought. Instead, she accepts an offer of marriage from a gentle, sickly minister passing through on his way to Japan. But her decision to abandon her home and to reject her son's powerful father sets off a dramatic saga that will echo down through the generations. Richly told and profoundly moving, Pachinko is a story of love, sacrifice, ambition, and loyalty. From bustling street markets to the halls of Japan's finest universities, to the pachinko parlors of the criminal underworld, Lee's complex and passionate characters, strong, stubborn women, devoted sisters and sons, fathers shaken by moral crisis, survive and thrive against the indifferent arc of history. And so I really loved these characters. I loved this plot. There were several places in the book where I went, oh, and that, is an expression that I just love to have, while I'm reading. I love that experience where I'm like, oh, I didn't see that coming. And there were a couple of those. There were some tears in this book. So really ran the gamut of emotions. And I love a book that can do that for me. The movie Pachinko is actually a TV series, and it came out in 2022. And it's on Apple TV Plus. So can't wait for that one. I need to watch that show for sure. And then the last one that my librarians recommended, not the last of all, because I made some choices of my own, is Dracula, which I also do not think I have ever read. So this is Dracula by Bram Stoker. And it says it was published May 12th, 1986, but I think this is much older. 488 pages and published by Norton. I should look up the real publishing dates of these two books and put them on the screen for you. I think I'll do that. The setting for this one is Transylvania and Whitby, Yorkshire, England. And here is the synopsis of Dracula. When Jonathan Harker visits Transylvania to help Count Dracula with the purchase of a London house, he makes a series of horrific discoveries about his client. Soon afterwards, various bizarre incidents unfold in England. An apparently unmanned ship is wrecked off the coast of Whitby. A young woman discovers strange puncture marks on her neck, and the inmate of a lunatic asylum raves about the master and his imminent arrival. In Dracula, Bram Stoker created one of the great masterpieces of the horror genre, brilliantly evoking a nightmare world of vampires and vampire hunters, and also illuminating the dark corners of Victorian sexuality and desire. And there was that verboten word for me, horror. I know now why I haven't read Dracula. It's probably more horror than I can handle. I mean, really, just looking at the cover, I should have figured that out. That cover says, Shannon should not read this. And then the movie or show is also Dracula. It has been out for several years, and the librarians seem to think it's worth a watch. So maybe give it a try. My list of books that I think you should try with the movie or show involves all books that have a movie or show coming out this year, usually the first part of this year. So the first one is The Lying Life of Adults by Elena Ferrante. And she is the one who wrote the Neapolitan Quartet. I've read the first of those, but nothing else that she's written, and really enjoyed it. So I recommend Elena Ferrante if you haven't read anything by her. And this is called The Lying Life of Adults. It's, I believe, her latest book. It was published September 1st, 2020 by Europa Editions, and it is set in Naples. It's 336 pages, and it won the Kirkus Prize for Fiction in 2020. Here's what we know about this one. Giovanna's pretty face is changing, turning ugly. At least so her father thinks. Giovanna, he says, looks more like her Aunt Vittoria every day. But can it be true? Is she really changing? Is she turning into her Aunt Vittoria, a woman she hardly knows, but whom her mother and father clearly despise? Surely there's a mirror somewhere in which she can see herself as she truly is. Giovanna is searching for her reflection in two kindred cities that fear and detest one another. Naples of the heights, which assumes a mask of refinement, and Naples of the depths, a place of excess and vulgarity. She moves from one to the other in search of the truth, but neither city seems to offer answers or escape. Named one of 2016's most influential people by Time magazine and frequently touted as a future Nobel Prize winner, Elena Ferrante has become one of the world's most read and beloved writers. With this new novel about the transition from childhood to adolescence to adulthood, Ferrante proves once again that she deserves her many accolades. In The Lying Life of Adults, readers will discover another gripping, highly addictive, and totally unforgettable Neapolitan story. So, and then The Lying Life of Adults, you have to love this movie poster. It is a Netflix series based on the novel by Elena Ferrante, and it came out January the 4th. And so I think I'm absolutely going to have to try that one out. I want to read the book, and then I want to see the show. I can't tell what she has in her hand, whether that's a piece of jewelry. It sort of looks like a hair clip or a brooch. So it'll be interesting to find out what that is. But the other hand, what she's doing with the other hand is very clear. So the next one on my list is Women Talking. And if you think about books that came out and then had a movie or show come out early this year, this was probably on your list of things that came right to mind. So this is Women Talking by Miriam Toews. It is an international bestseller, and it is 216 pages, so not very big. Came out April 2nd, 2019. and it is set in Bolivia. It also won the Reading Women Award for Fiction and the Brooklyn Public Library Literary Prize for Fiction and Poetry. Here is the synopsis. One evening, 8 Mennonite women climb into a hayloft to conduct a secret meeting. For the past 2 years, each of these women, and more than 100 other girls in their colony, has been repeatedly violated in the night by demons coming to punish them for their sins. Now that the women have learned they were in fact drugged and attacked by a group of men from their own community, they are determined to protect themselves and their daughters from future harm. While the men of the colony are off in the city attempting to raise enough money to bail out the rapists and bring them home, these women, all illiterate, without any knowledge of the world outside their community, and unable even to speak the language of the country they live in, have very little time to make a choice. Should they stay in the only world they've ever known, or should they dare to escape? Based on real events and told through the minutes of the women's all-female symposium, Toe's masterful novel uses wry, politically engaged humor to relate this tale of women claiming their own power to decide. And that sounds incredible to me. So just the female power there, the sort of twist in that they all believe that demons have come after them and come to find out it is men in their community, and that the men are still trying to protect the rapists, just fascinates me. This is the movie poster, the 2 hands in sort of a Amish looking clothing. I'm sure it's not Amish because it's not set in the United States. But it stars Rooney Mara, Claire Foy, Jessie Buckley, and Ben Whishaw, and Frances McDormand, who I love. And this is a film by Sarah Polley. So I would highly recommend that you get that book and then check out the movie. And it is actually a movie in the movie theater. The next one I have on my list is Dear Edward. And this is a New York Times bestseller. It says, "We'll break your heart and put it back together again." And that's a quote from J. Courtney Sullivan. And this is by Ann Napolitano, who you probably have heard of most recently for Hello Beautiful. But this is her book before that, Dear Edward. And it is published by the Dial Press. It's 340 pages, and it was published January 6th, 2020. It is set in New Jersey, and it won the Goodreads Choice Award for Fiction in 2020. Here's the synopsis. One summer morning, 12-year-old Edward Adler, his beloved older brother, his parents, and 183 other passengers board a flight in Newark headed for Los Angeles. Among them is a Wall Street wonderkin, a young woman coming to terms with an unexpected pregnancy, an injured vet returning from Afghanistan, a septuagenarian business tycoon, and a free-spirited woman running away from her controlling husband. And then, tragically, the plane crashes. Edward is the sole survivor. Edward's story captures the attention of the nation, but he struggles to find a place for himself in a world without his family. He continues to feel that a piece of him has been left in the sky, forever tied to the plane and all of his fellow passengers. But then he makes an unexpected discovery, one that will lead him to the answers of some of life's most profound questions. When you've lost everything, how do you find yourself? How do you discover your purpose? What does it mean not just to survive, but to truly live? So that is Dear Edward, and you can see Apple TV Plus picture of the young man crying here. I believe that this is coming out this year, early this year, and I am really looking forward to that one. It actually came out February the 3rd, and it's Dear Edward. So this next one is an interesting title. This one is called Jesus Revolution: How God Transformed an Unlikely Generation and How We Can Do It Again Today, by Greg Laurie and Ellen Vaughn. Published September 4th, 2018 by Baker Books, and it's 272 pages. Here's what it says in the synopsis. God has always been interested in turning unlikely people into his most fervent followers. Prostitutes and pagans, tax collectors and tricksters. The more unlikely, the more it seemed to please God and to demonstrate his power, might, and mercy. America in the 1960s and 1970s was full of unlikely people. men and women who had rejected the stuffy religion of their parents' generation, who didn't follow the rules and didn't fit in. The perfect setting for the greatest spiritual awakening of the 20th century. With passion and purpose, Greg Laurie and Ellen Vaughn tell the amazing true story of the Jesus movement, an extraordinary time of mass revival, renewal, and reconciliation. Setting fascinating personal stories within the context of one of the most tumultuous times in modern history, the authors draw important parallels with our own time of spiritual apathy or outright hostility, offering hope for the next generation of unlikely believers and for the next great American revival. Those who lived through the Jesus Revolution will find here an inspiring reminder of the times and people that shaped their lives and faith. Younger readers will discover a forgotten part of recent American history, and along with it, a reason to believe that God is not finished with their generation. And the movie poster looks really cool. So in this one are Joel Courtney, Jonathan Room, Kimberly Williams Paisley, Anna Grace Barlow, and Kelsey Grammer, who I'm sure you've heard of. It just looked fascinating to me. Like the whole idea that I know nothing about this time period and this movement, not necessarily something that I would usually go for, but it's got the hippy dippy trippy kind of feel to it. And I was just really intrigued. So the fact that there's a book and that they made it into a movie got my attention. So that is Jesus Revolution, and it is coming out, or it came out earlier this year. So the next one on my list is called Integrity, Good People, Bad Choices, and Life Lessons from the White House. And that is by Ejel Bud Crow with Matthew Crow. And it says that it was published August 27th, 2007 by Public Affairs, and it's 240 pages. Now, this one, the movie for it has a totally different name. It's called White House Plumbers, and it's on HBO. It says, Watergate was bad, they were worse. And it's Woody Harrelson is one of the actors in the movie, and Justin Theroux is the other. So really just the fact White House Plumbers is intriguing to me, first of all, but Justin Theroux and Woody Harrelson really got my attention. So the synopsis of the book goes like this. In 1971, Ejel Bud Crow was summoned to a closed-door meeting by John Ehrlichman, his mentor and key confidant of President Richard Nixon, in a secluded office in the Western White House. Crow thought he was walking into a meeting to discuss the drug control program launched on his most recent trip to South Vietnam. Instead, he was handed a file and the responsibility for the SIU, Special Investigations Unit, later to become notorious as the Plumbers. The unit was to investigate the leaks of top-secret government documents, particularly the Pentagon Papers, to the press. The president considered this task critical to national security. Nixon said he wanted the unit headed up by a real son of a bitch. He got the studious, zealous, and loyal to a fault Bud Crow instead. In that instant, Crow was handed the job that would lead to one of the most famous conspiracies in presidential history and the demise of the Nixon administration. Integrity is Crow's memoir of his experiences, of what really went on behind closed doors, of how a good man can lose his moral compass, of how exercising power without integrity can destroy a life. It also tells the moving story of how he turned his life back around. For anyone interested in the ethical challenges of leadership or of professional life, Integrity is thought-provoking and inspiring reading. So, real life story, Nixon era, Watergate kind of story, and the story both of Nixon and what happened to him and this guy, Bud Crow, who was put in charge of the investigation. So probably would not have picked up the book without the movie, but likely will pick up the book because the movie looks really interesting too. And just personally, I always have to read the book before I see the movie, or I try at least. The one exception to that was Hunger Games. I did not know anything about Hunger Games when my husband took me to see the movie. We were getting out of the house because our son, we had a babysitter, and we just picked a movie at random, and I saw the movie and then went back and read all of the books. So, and have subsequently seen all of the movies and seen all of the movies and read all of the books with my son, including the prequel. So let's see what we have next. The next one, number 11 on my list, is called Wellmania. It says, I laughed so hard I choked on a donut reading this book. I'm so glad Bridget Delaney tried all of this crazy stuff so I never have to. And that's a quote from Jen Mann, author of People I Want to Punch in the Throat. And the subtitle for Wellmania is Extreme Misadventures in the Search for Wellness by Bridget Delaney. That was published August 2017 by Nero, and it's 336 pages. Here's the synopsis. Cold pressed juices, hot yoga, quitting sugar, paleo, mindfulness. If you embrace these things, you will be happy. You will be well. Just ask Instagram. From celebrity vegan chefs to sleep gurus, there is no shortage of people trying to sell us the wellness dream. Wellness has become a billion-dollar industry. But what does wellness even mean? Does any of this stuff actually work? Is there any science behind it? Feeling exhausted and a bit stressed and flabby, journalist Bridget Delaney decides to find out, using herself as the guinea pig. Starting with a brutal 101-day fast, Bridget tests the things that are meant to make us well. Yoga classes, colonics, mediation, CBT, Balinese healing, silent retreats, and group psychotherapy, and sorts through what works and what is just expensive hype. She asks, what does this obsession say about us? Is total wellness possible or even desirable? Where's the fun in it all? And why do you smell so bad when you haven't eaten in 7 days? Wellmania is an in-depth, entertaining, laugh-out-loud, funny exploration of one of the most fascinating trends in our culture. Her columns on the wellness industry for the Guardian have gone viral with more than 100,000 page views in the UK, Australia, and the US. So I picked this one. I mean, look at the movie poster. It's Celeste Barber is in the movie. It's a Netflix special. And I just thought that the book sounds interesting, good, quirky, funny, but to see all of this in real life will be, even better in my opinion. So this is one that I would really be interested in as a book movie pairing. So I hope that you might enjoy that one. The next one is by a favorite author of mine. He is up there with John Irving for me, and that is Richard Russo. He wrote Nobody's Fool, Somebody's Fool, all of those books. And this book is called Straight Man. It is number 12 on my list. And the blurb says this, the funniest serious novel I have read since, maybe since Portnoy's Complaint. And that's a quote from Tom DeHaven, the New York Times Book Review. So this is Straight Man by Richard Russo, and it has a duck on the front of the book. So I'm not sure what that has to do with anything, but I bet we'll find out. Published June 9th, 1998, and it is by Vintage, and it's 391 pages, and it is set in Pennsylvania. Here's the synopsis. Hank Devereaux, a 50-year-old one-time novelist, now serving as temporary chair of the English department, has more than a midlife crisis to contend with when he learns that he must cull 20% of his department to meet budget. Half in love with 3 women, unable to understand his younger daughter or come to terms with his father, he has a dangerous philosophy that life and academic life could be simpler, but he fails to see the larger consequences of his own actions or of the small world politics that ebb and flow around him as his colleagues jostle for position and marriages fall apart and regroup. The despair of his wife and the scourge of the campus geese. So it's a goose, not a duck. I had that thought, but I was like, no, that's a duck, right? The despair of his wife and the scourge of the campus geese. He is a man at odds with himself and caught somewhere between cause and effect. And I think Richard Russo just does characters so well. So I cannot wait to meet Hank Devereaux and read about this guy and his wife and his daughter. I find that Richard Russo's characters are so real and so memorable. That's really why I love his writing. And this guy, so Bob Odenkirk, is starring in the Straight Man series for AMC. So that is where this is going. And you can see he's burning money. So I think that's interesting as well. Let's see. The next one on my list is a favorite. This is a book that I've actually read and really enjoyed. It is Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed. by Cheryl Strayed. And you probably recognize her name from Wild, the book about hiking the mountains as she tried to overcome depression and addiction and trauma in her life. But this is Tiny Beautiful Thing. So Cheryl Strayed was Dear Sugar, an advice columnist. And this book is all of sort of the best advice that she gave in that column. It was really, really good. And I'm very interested to see how they're going to turn it into a movie. I also understand that both Reese Witherspoon and Laura Dern are in it, and you can't really beat that. So this was also a Reese's Book Club selection, which if she's in it, that makes sense to me. This was published November 1st, 2022, and it is by Vintage, and it's 400 pages. It says, an anniversary edition of the best-selling collection of Dear Sugar advice columns, written by the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Wild, featuring a new preface and 6 additional columns. Soon to be a Hulu original series. For more than a decade, thousands of people have sought advice from Dear Sugar, the pseudonym of best-selling author Cheryl Strayed, first through her online column at The Rumpus, later through her hit podcast, Dear Sugars, and now through her popular Substack newsletter. Tiny Beautiful Things collects the best of Dear Sugar in one volume, bringing her wisdom to many more readers. This 10th anniversary edition features 6 new columns and a new preface by Strayed. Rich with humor, insight, compassion, and absolute honesty, this book is a balm for everything life throws our way. And I really liked what Cheryl Strayed shared in her columns. It very much reminded me of 12-step work. I would not be surprised at all if she, did a lot of work in AA or NA or one of the addiction 12-step programs, because her advice was just very down to earth, very well thought out, emotional, and she really seemed to get it. When people asked her for advice, what she gave back was incredibly heartfelt and really, really powerful. So looking forward to that. Catherine Hahn is in the movie. I really like her. And it says Broken is a beautiful place to start. And the movie came out on Hulu April 7th. So Tiny Beautiful Things. Now this next one, I've heard about the book everywhere. Like the book is everywhere. And I still haven't read it, but I want to read the book. It's another Reese's Book Club selection. And now I want to see the movie. So I'm sure that it's going to bump up my list. This is The Last Thing He Told Me. And it says, #1 New York Times bestseller, more than 2 million copies sold. I'm not surprised. Like I said, I've seen this everywhere. And The Last Thing He Told Me is going to stream on Apple TV+. This is by Laura Dave. She also wrote 800 Grapes, which I have seen around quite a bit and also have not read. It was published May 4th, 2021 by Simon & Schuster, and it's 320 pages. It is set in Sausalito, California, and Austin, Texas. And it won a Goodreads Choice Award for Mystery and Thriller. Here is the synopsis. The instant #1 New York Times bestselling mystery and Reese Witherspoon book club pick that's captivated more than 1 million readers about a woman searching for the truth about her husband's disappearance at any cost. Before Owen Michaels disappears, he manages to smuggle a note to his beloved wife of 1 year. Protect her. Despite her confusion and fear, Hannah Hall knows exactly to whom the note refers. Owen's 16-year-old daughter, Bailey. Bailey, who lost her mother tragically as a child. Bailey, who wants absolutely nothing to do with her new stepmother. As Hannah's increasingly desperate calls to Owen go unanswered, as the FBI arrests Owen's boss, as a U.S. Marshal and FBI agents arrive at her Sausalito home unannounced, Hannah quickly realizes her husband isn't who he said he was, and that Bailey just may hold the key to figuring out Owen's true identity and why he really disappeared. Hannah and Bailey set out to discover the truth together, but as they start putting together the pieces of Owen's past, they soon realize they are also building a new future, one neither Hannah nor Bailey could have anticipated. So that sounds really good. Just the fact that he's disappeared, there's going to be this relationship between stepmother and stepdaughter, that there are secrets here, and it sounds like they're also going to be going on a road trip, which I love. But, you know, the idea that there are twists and turns here really intrigues me. Also, as a stepmom, I love this idea that it's actually a stepdaughter that she's having to build a relationship with. I know the challenges of that, and can't wait to see how that plays out on the page. And this is actually Jennifer Garner, The Last Thing He Told Me, and it's going to be Apple TV Plus. Let's see, number 15 on my list, a classic of my childhood, and it has just recently come out in theaters. It's Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. And that one was actually initially published. It doesn't tell me again. I'm going to have to put these. Yeah, it was published in 1976. The revised format is by Athenaeum Books for Young Readers. I don't know who originally published it, but the latest version, the one I'm looking at here on Goodreads, was September 2001. And this is set in New York City and Farbrook, New Jersey. And the synopsis, as if you don't already know it, I'm sure that most of you have read this either as you were growing up or as a throwback. But here's the synopsis. Margaret Simon, almost 12, likes long hair, tuna fish, the smell of rain, and things that are pink. She's just moved from New York City to Farbrook, New Jersey, and is anxious to fit in with her new friends, Nancy, Gretchen, and Janie. When they form a secret club to talk about private subjects like boys, bras, and getting their first periods, Margaret is happy to belong. But none of them can believe Margaret doesn't have religion and that she isn't going to the Y or the Jewish Community Center. What they don't know is Margaret has her very own special relationship with God. She can talk to God about everything, family, friends, even Moose Freed, her secret crush. Margaret is funny and real, and her thoughts and feelings are oh so relatable. You'll feel like she's talking right to you, sharing her secrets with a friend. So I think it's worth it to go back and read this again. I also would love to see the movie. I don't know the young woman who's starring in it. Her name is Kelly Freeman Craig, and you can see her here in the movie poster, but I do not know her from any other movies. But this is actually playing in theaters, and it's actually out now. Number 16 is called Text for You by Sophie Kramer. And it is published February 8th, 2022 by Penguin Books, and it's 256 pages. It says, a heartwarming story of love, loss, serendipity, and texting. Soon to be a major motion picture starring Sam Heughan and Priyanka Chopra Jonas. After a heated argument, Clara's fiance stormed out of their apartment. But before they have a chance to reconcile, he dies in a tragic accident. It has been 2 years, but she's still paralyzed with grief, and her friends are worried about her. So to try to say what was left unsaid, she starts texting his old phone. What she doesn't realize is that the number has been reassigned. Across town, Sven's phone begins receiving mysterious but heartfelt text messages. He doesn't respond, but he's captivated by the sender. His own relationship has been on the rocks, and when it ends, he sets out to find the person who has been texting him. Neither Sven nor Clara knew what they were setting out to find, but it would change both of their lives forever. And I just think that's a really cute little premise, you know, the whole idea that her fiance passes away and she starts texting his phone and somebody's actually receiving them. You know, that was part of the premise in one of the books we talked about earlier this year. That somehow accidentally, this young man who was in a drunk driving accident accidentally texted a girl from his school. And I couldn't believe that. But the idea that she's texting a stranger and he actually becomes interested in her doesn't surprise me. And so this is, as I said, Priyanka Chopra Jonas, Sam Heughan, and Celine Dion is in it. And this is the movie poster. Okay. So number 17, I told you this was a long list, is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. And this is going to be a Netflix film. I believe it's coming out very soon. Jenny Han is the author of The Summer I Turned Pretty, and you probably have heard of To All the Boys I've Loved Before. It has been around since 2014 and has gotten a lot of press. It is a YA book. It was published by Simon & Schuster for young readers, and it's 355 pages, and it's set in Charlottesville, Virginia. It won the Goodreads Choice Award for Young Adult Fiction in 2014. It has a very short synopsis, and it goes like this. To all the boys I've loved before is the story of Lara Jean, who has never openly admitted her crushes, but instead wrote each boy a letter about how she felt, sealed it, and hid it in a box under her bed. But one day, Lara Jean discovers that somehow her secret box of letters has been mailed, causing all her crushes from her past to confront her about the letters. Her first kiss, the boy from summer camp, even her sister's ex-boyfriend, Josh. As she learns to deal with her past loves face to face, Lara Jean discovers that something good may come out of these letters after all. Now that's a horrible feeling. You know, the idea that you wrote something down because you don't want to have to deal with it face to face, and then the letters get mailed and you are getting confronted by these people. That is, again, one of my nightmares. So, but I think it's a great premise. This is the movie poster. Again, I don't know this actress. What bugs me about this movie poster is she appears to be 30 years old, and she's supposed to be a young high school student, but I'm guessing this woman is much older than what she's actually playing in the show. And this one is coming out August 17th on Netflix. Number 18 is American Born Chinese. It is coming out from Disney, and it is by Jean Luen Yang. And let's see, I love the graphic novel cover. So you've probably seen this in places before, a very popular cover. I just really like it. And then they've Disneyed it up with the movie cover here. Everything is real life as opposed to comic book. But let's read a little bit about it. So this one was published September 5th, 2006, 240 pages by First Second First. I'm not sure that's the publisher, but that's what it says. And the characters are Jin Wang, Wei Chun Sun, Susie Nakamura, and Amelia Harris. And it won a ton of awards. And I'm not even going to bother to read them all to you. It just won a lot of awards. Here's the synopsis. All Jin Wang wants is to fit in. When his family moves to a new neighborhood, he suddenly finds that he's the only Chinese-American student at his school. Jocks and bullies pick on him constantly, and he has hardly any friends. Then, to make matters worse, he falls in love with an all-American girl. Born to rule over all the monkeys in the world, the story of the Monkey King is one of the oldest and greatest Chinese fables. Adored by his subjects, master of the arts of Kung Fu, he is the most powerful monkey on earth. But the Monkey King doesn't want to be a monkey. He wants to be hailed as a god. Chin Qi is the ultimate negative Chinese stereotype, and he's ruining his cousin Danny's life. Danny is a popular kid at school, but every year Chin Qi comes to visit, and every year Danny has to transfer to a new school to escape the shame. This year, though, things quickly go from bad to worse. These three apparently unrelated tales come together with an unexpected twist, in a modern fable that is hilarious, poignant, and action-packed. American Born Chinese is an amazing rise, all the way up to the astonishing climax, and confirms what a growing number of readers already know. Jean Yang is a major talent. So I am really looking forward to this one. I know that it's a graphic novel, which isn't usually my thing. I know that it's YA, but this just sounds really good to me. The idea of the three stories coming together, one a fable, and two about Chinese Americans. I'm really curious. So that is coming out very soon from Disney. And then the last one on my list, number 19, I'm sorry the list is so long, but there was so much to tell you about, is The Perfect Find by Tia Williams. Now, I know Tia Williams because I read 7 Days in June and really, really loved it. So I'm looking forward to this by her. Really like both book covers. So this is the original cover, and this one is the hand-drawn cover, and I'm not really sure which one I like better. I just love them both. So this one was published April 12th, 2016 by Brown Girls Publishing, and it's 363 pages. And the movie stars Gabrielle Union. So, and it is a Tribeca Festival movie. That's where it came out. So here's the synopsis. Will a 40-year-old woman with everything on the line, her high-stakes career, ticking biological clock, bank account, risk it all for a lusty secret romance with the one person who could destroy her comeback? Jenna Jones, former It Girl fashion editor, is broke and desperate for a second chance. When she's dumped by her longtime fiance and fired from Darling magazine, she begs for a job at stylezine.com from her old arch nemesis, Darcy Vale. But Jenna soon realizes she's in over her head. She's working with digital-savvy millennials half her age, has never even Twittered, and pretends to still be a fashion somebody while living a style lie. She sold her designer wardrobe to afford her sketched-out studio, and now quietly wears Walmart's finest. Worse, the 22-year-old videographer assigned to shoot her web series is driving her crazy. Wildly sexy with a smile Jenna feels in her thighs, Eric Combs is way off limits, but almost too delicious to resist. Written by the best-selling author of The Accidental Diva, The Perfect Find is a scandalously sexy, laugh-out-loud saga of star-crossed love and starting over. So, a rom-com kind of thing. Tia Williams does sexy very well. 7 Days in June was very sexy and salacious. And I enjoyed it very much. So I am sure that both the book and the movie will have some sex in it. And I'm looking forward to Gabrielle Union, although I'm not sure Gabrielle Union is in her 40s. She certainly can play a woman who is attracted to a 20-year-old man without problems, but I don't know if she's in her 40s. She looks a lot younger than that to me. So those are 19 books that have movie adaptations that I think you should check out. 5 from my librarians and another 14 where the movie adaptations are coming out this year. I think it's always fun to have a book and a movie. I almost always prefer the book. There are very few instances where I prefer the movie, but I still think it's worth it to watch something in movie format that you've read and enjoyed. So I hope you will grab some of those and read them and then grab some popcorn and see them at the movies. I hope you enjoyed this. This is a little different from anything I've ever done before. So if you do, please click like and subscribe and let me know so that I can do more things like this in the future. I will look forward to seeing more of you later this week. I have a lot of single book reviews and coming soon lists that I'm excited to share with you. And I hope we can talk all things bookish very soon. Take care. Bye.